The Mariners head down to Disneyland for a 4-game set with the Halos. Our thoughts on that and the new look Mariners bullpen coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. This is Trident and Colby Patnett for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by eBay Motors. The championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, and it's the same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head on over to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial. Check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. On the show today, we'll get you set for this upcoming Mariners Angels series. We're also going to talk about this Mariners bullpen. What do we think of Trent Thornton, and how do they plan on covering innings the rest of the year? But let's start with this series here, Colby. 4 games down in Anaheim. The Angels look pretty different from the last time we saw them. The Mariners a little bit, but definitely not as much. What are your thoughts heading into the series?
Can I spin this to talk about the trade deadline? Yeah, it's obviously it's a pretty big series. 4-gamers are interesting because the difference between splitting the series and winning 3 out of 4 is drastic. So I think if you're the Mariners, you have to at least split this series. I mean, really, if you're the Angels too, like the split is like should be both teams' worst case scenario, because dropping 2 games behind somebody at this stage of the year in one weekend is it's kind of annoying. So I think that, you gotta find a way to split, and it's not going to be easy. You do have Ohtani on the mound tonight, so I would say your odds of winning tonight are about 20%, especially with the way Woo's been pitching lately. So you probably are going to be in a position where you have to win 2 or 3 this weekend. But if you can win 3 out of 4, or if you can, find a way to sweep, if either side finds a way to sleep, honestly, you can almost like just end the season of the other team. So it's a pretty critical series here. Both teams need to go at least 2-2, which makes, both teams desperate. But if the Mariners can, win this series or even sweep it, which again, difficult, then it more or less puts the Angels to bed for a while, at least, because then you would be 4.5 games up on them. So yeah, it's a big series. There's no question about it. But again, yeah, if you go 2-2 at the very least, then you're going to be fine. Like the series, like the season will continue. You'll be fine. If you drop this series or you get swept, you could recover, but it's not looking good. So you got to find a way to win 2 games in the next 4. And then, you go off to San Diego, who's playing better ball right now. And then you have Baltimore, best team in the American League. Record wise, and then you can kind of get into the part of your schedule that a lot of people circled at the beginning of the year. So you never know how those things play out. They could sweep this 4-game series, and they could win like 6 of their next 7, and then they could go into that good stretch and they could drop 6 of 7. You never know. So but yeah, it's a critical series. Seattle's not going to throw Gilbert in it, so you have to survive a Miller and a Woo outing, which is not ideal with the way they're throwing the ball right now. But it is what it is. You got to find a way to win 2 of these games at least.
So Woo versus Ohtani tonight. Yeah, Castillo versus Detmers tomorrow. Kirby versus Anderson on Saturday, and then Miller versus Chase Silseth, who I don't think we've seen before. So interested to see him and what he's all about. So what are your thoughts, hopes, whatever, for Bryan Woo tonight?
Eight innings. Like you can't go 4 innings. You can't go 3 innings. You just can't have it. You gotta go 5, 6 at least tonight. Don't let Ohtani be the one to beat you. You haven't had great command of your off-speed stuff. That's fine. And there are other dangerous hitters in this, in this lineup, but let them be the ones to beat you. Don't let Ohtani beat you. You have to walk him. You walk him. If you fall behind 2-0, you don't throw him the challenge fastball, right? You just pitch around him, make somebody else on this team beat you, and find a way to go deep in this game. I mean, not even deep, but like you can't go 3 2/3. You can't go, 4. You have to go 5, 6 innings. You have to give this bullpen, a legit shot. And you have to give your offense a very real shot to stay in this game. And unfortunately, with Ohtani on the mound, your margin of error is not that big. Now, Ohtani hasn't been incredible on the mound this year. So I don't think that it's, I don't think it's one of those situations where like if you give up a run, it's game over. But yeah, it's you can't go crazy. You have to keep this thing relatively close. And I think if you're giving up 3-4 runs, you're gonna have a hard time winning this game. So for Woo, it's gut check time.
Well, and if Ohtani gives you an opportunity, right? If there's a window here for you to strike, you have to take advantage of it. Because last time we saw Ohtani down in Anaheim, his command was a little all over the place for the first inning, maybe first couple of innings. I can't remember exactly, but I think they only were able to get 1, maybe 2 runs out of that. They need more if Ohtani does give them an opening there. So definitely going to be keeping an eye on that. But yeah, with Woo's recent struggles, the question comes up about when are we going to see Emerson Hancock potentially? What are they going to do with this rotation? So what do you think here with Hancock? Because I obviously, like, we know your overall feelings about him as a prospect, all that. We don't need to go over that whole thing again, but
we're gonna.
But since June 6th, he's actually really gotten his walks under control. Just a 1.87 walks per 9, 8.90 Ks per 9, 2.97 ERA, 3.40 FIP. He's won Texas League Pitcher of the Week a couple of times during that stretch. I don't know specifically if he's changed anything mechanically or whatnot, but when do you think we could finally see Hancock here?
I don't think it can be much more than a couple weeks. He just started last night. Did his normal Chris Flexen routine and got out of there. So because that's who he is. He's Paul Blackburn. He's a number 5 starter. Yippee. But he's actually approaching a new career high in innings pitched as well. So that is something to keep an eye on. He's was far ahead of Woo. So it's not, a huge deal, but I think you're going to see him pretty soon. His with the off day coming up, 2 off days after this 4-game set. I think maybe they'll give Woo another shot through the rotation because they can kind of, relax it. And maybe they even skip him this time. They use the day off and they kind of push guys around so that they can skip them for a time or two. But yeah, you're going to see Hancock in the next 2 weeks if he's healthy. I just can't imagine that by the time, by the end of Felix weekend, I would be somewhat surprised if Hancock's not on this team. And if he's not on the team the following weekend, I would be shocked. So it's coming. It's going to happen. And they've still talked about a 6-man rotation. I hate that idea. I get why they might try it, but I hate that idea. So I think it's probably going to be, I would say in the next 2 weeks, I suspect we'll see Hancock.
Real quick, why do you hate that idea?
Because you're taking the ball away from Luis Castillo and George Kirby and Logan Gilbert, and you're giving it to Emerson Hancock to keep a struggling Bryan Woo or Bryce Miller in the rotation. What's the point? Like,
right.
You do the math on that. If you stick with a 6-man rotation, even just like 2 times through, you're going to take away one start from Castillo. You're going to take away 1 start in September from Kirby. And do you really want to kick starts right now with the playoff race being as tight as it is? I don't think you do. So I hate that idea. To me, if you put Woo in the bullpen and Hancock just kind of eats those innings, or you piggyback him, but we'll talk about that. I'm sure in a little bit, but yeah, I don't like the idea of giving Luis Castillo fewer starts, giving Logan Gilbert fewer starts. I want my best pitchers to pitch as often as possible.
So we've talked a lot over the last couple of days about how Dominic Canzone and Josh Rojas impact the offense, but now let's talk about how the departure of Paul Sewald impacts the bullpen. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Sleeper. Are you using the Sleeper app for daily fantasy baseball? Want to times your money by 100? Sleeper is now offering up to a 100 times payout for up to 8 pick contests. Choose as many as 8 players that you like and pick more or less on your favorite baseball stats like home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more. Get your picks right and you could win big. And if you think Julio's going yard, add him to your lineup. If you think Luis Castillo striking out 6 or more, add him to your lineup. Making your picks is easy and takes only 30 seconds or less. And if you win, you can withdraw your payouts safe and quickly. Use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. You can catch the Mariners and the Angels tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast, Sirius XM via the SXM app. And real quick, before we continue our show here, just programming note for you. We are not going to be putting out a show tomorrow. We'll see about the weekend. We'll see if, our schedules line up, all that stuff. We'll see if the Mariners win, right? We've told you in the past that it's not really worth it for us to do post-game shows after a loss, unless that's just kind of what we plan to do anyway. So we'll let you know. Keep your eyes glued to our social media channels, all that, and you'll get all the updates you need. All right, so this Mariners bullpen. I want to actually start by talking about Trent Thornton, because we didn't really talk about him. I asked you yesterday about your very early impressions of Josh Rojas and Dominic Canzone. What about your first impressions of Trent Thornton, who pitched on Tuesday in the 6-4 loss to the Red Sox? 2 1/3 innings pitch, 3 strikeouts, no walks. The sweeper is what Baseball Savant is calling it. Looked pretty good. What did you think?
He's fine. I mean, he's just kind of that middle innings guy, bridge guy who gets you to the back end of your pen when your starter can't go deep, which means he's probably going to get a lot of innings because, again, we've seen the last few starts from Woo and Miller, and they faded pretty quick in those starts. So maybe it's just a rookie wall thing. Maybe they're legitimately running out of gas. Miller really shouldn't be. Woo is, but I think you're going to see Thornton a lot in that role. The kind of issue with that is that you don't have the deep bullpen like you used to, as deep of a bullpen as you used to. So if you're only going to you're using one guy for an extended period, every week, then he's going to be down for the next 2 or 3 days at least. So, Thornton, it's kind of what we expected. It's a good breaking ball. He can spin it. We knew he generates elite spins. He was pretty good for Toronto this year, kind of in an up and down role. But yeah, I mean, he's had some success at the big league level in the past. We know who he is. He's 92 to 96 with a fastball, and he's got a really good breaking ball. He can spin both of the pitches pretty well. He's going to throw strikes for the most part. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a starter arsenal in the bullpen. But despite the great spins, it's not like an elite breaking ball or anything like that. So I think he's totally fine. He's basically, I think, what they hope Chris Flexen could be, but Flexen's just not equipped for that role. Thornton is, because his stuff is frankly better. And he has more experience pitching out of that role. So he looked fine. Did exactly what you needed him to do. He 8 innings for a shallow pen on a game that, you might have won if Scott had made some different decisions with that pitching staff, but it is what it is. I thought Thornton looked fine. I think he's, a totally fine 7th, 8th guy in your pen.
Mm-hmm. And as he puts out more outings, we might get some data that shows if the Mariners are making some tweaks there as well. So something to keep an eye on that front. So as far as the overall bullpen goes here, Colby, no Paul Sewald. That's the guy that was taking the ball in 2/3 of your save opportunities. You lose a high leverage arm here overall. Now a lot rides on Andres Munoz, Matt Brash, Justin Topa is getting an uptick in usage as well. We've seen Taylor Saucedo take the ball in a couple of high leverage situations lately. So how do we think this bullpen is going to cover innings the rest of the way?
On a wing and a prayer. I mean, that seems to be the front office's response. You figure it out. So I don't know exactly. The ninth inning or the save situations, I don't know if they're going to have a guy because, frankly, you want to use Brash and Munoz, especially if they're both throwing the ball really well. You want to use them in your high leverage spots, and that doesn't mean the ninth inning every single night. So,
Right.
in terms of how do they cover Paul's innings, I think it's kind of a group effort thing. I think we'll see guys go, 4 outs more often than we have in the past. I think you'll see guys go 5 outs more often than they have in the past. And because we're getting towards the end of the year here, it's more of a sprint. So you're more likely to do those things anyways than you are in April and May. But yeah, is the Mariners bullpen equipped to do that? I don't know. Like we haven't really seen Munoz do that a lot. We haven't really seen Brash do that a lot. So we'll see in terms of like if I had to get like who is the Paul Sewald role right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's probably Munoz because Paul was, I don't, maybe it's Topa, because if you're just looking for like a traditional closer, you're just looking for somebody who's good enough to not blow the game. Whereas, the fireman role or whatever you want to call it, the high leverage roles, those should be going to Munoz and Brash as often as you can. So yeah, how do they cover innings in the bullpen? I think everybody just picks up an extra out here or there. I think you're going to see more matchup based. And the Mariners wanted to do that in the past, and they have. We've seen Paul in the eighth and whatnot, but for the most part, it's been Paul in the ninth this year, and I think that particular role is probably going to be gobbled up by Topa, maybe Spire, depending on matchups. Sure. And then I think you're just going to see Brash and Munoz kind of handle the high leverage roles. But yeah, they're an arm short. Surprise without Paul. So how do they cover those innings? They ride Brash and Munoz pretty hard and hope that they don't collapse down the stretch.
Right. And we've already seen them try to get 4 outs out of Brash in this Red Sox series. Munoz was set up for a 4-out save the other night before they scored 5 runs in the bottom of the 8th, and they ended up going to Isaiah Campbell after that. But yeah, so that does seem to be the game plan for them. What do you make of the uptick in usage for Taylor Saucedo? And do you think he's capable of taking on that role?
No. Like, he's been better recently, sure, but dude gives up a lot of base runners. And when you're, a high leverage guy, your literal job is to not let people reach base. Like, it's not like, oh, you gave up a hit, but whatever, it's fine. No, because when you go into those high leverage spots, typically giving up a hit means giving up the lead. So no, I don't. I think Saucedo is fine. I think he's, I think he's a middle guy. And we've seen them use him in some high-ish leverage spots, but not really. I could see it against lefties. Fine, whatever. Again, this is going to be more more matchup based than ever, but I don't want Saucedo getting high leverage spots on a nightly basis. So
right,
we'll see. Honestly, I trust Spire more because I feel like Spire more likely to get you a strikeout, which again, typically in high leverage spots, that is the ideal outcome. You want a strikeout, and I just don't think Saucedo's that guy. So I think he's totally fine middle guy. Depending on matchup, you might give him a high leverage situation, but I don't trust him enough to just start handing him, save opportunities, quote unquote.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Again, you can catch the Mariners and the Angels tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. What's going on with Pelayo Barrera? Because they brought him into a very unideal situation. Against the Twins, and then they sent him down after that, and he hasn't been back up. And they've been sticking here with Devin Sweet. They brought up 110 for the day before or after they traded Sewald, and then they brought up Thornton after that. Do we think we're going to see Barrera again? Like, what's going on with that situation?
Yeah, apparently he's had some issues back down in Arkansas throwing strikes again. So yeah, not ideal because Barrera is, a potential high leverage reliever. He does have that type of stuff, but if he can't throw strikes, at all, what good does that do you? So, it's my understanding that he's really struggling with his command right now. They might have to take that shot anyways, because again, they need strikeout stuff added to this bullpen. So yeah, it is interesting because the Mariners feel like they don't want to use Devin Sweet ever unless they absolutely have to. Essentially, Devin Sweet is either the human victory cigar or the human white flag. So yeah, if he's in the game, they're either up by a lot or they don't think they can win this game. So that's a wasted bullpen spot. The Mariners have wasted, the 21 through 26 spots, multiple of them all year. And they continue that proud tradition right now. But honestly, they don't have a ton of other options. Diego Castillo, believe it or not, still in the org.
Yeah.
Cannot find the strike zone.
Yeah.
Matt Festa really struggling right now.
Yeah.
Barrera really struggling right now. So, do they take a shot on AJ Puckett or I don't even know if he's healthy? Do they Riley O'Brien?
Stephen Kolek.
Kolek doesn't really have a breaking ball right now. So, they're kind of short. They're short. And the one guy that might be able to help them is probably Bryan Woo, but they seem pretty, focused on him finishing the year in the rotation, which again, to me is a mistake. So yeah, if the Mariners are looking for a high leverage option or a potential high leverage option in the middle of their farm system, they don't have it right now, at least not what I can see. So maybe there's a surprise. You never know. But Barrera seems like the natural answer there. But right now they literally trust Barrera less than they trust Devin Sweet. So
yeah, so we'll have to keep an eye on it. It's just like the upside of Barrera is obviously so much higher than Sweet or Campbell. Really, quite a few of these guys in this bullpen. And right now, when you're an arm short and you're looking for some high leverage innings, like Barrera would have the upside to do that. But if you don't trust him, then there isn't really any point of going down that avenue either. But again, that's probably the only answer, right? Outside of just, one of these guys like Taylor Saucedo just coming out of nowhere and being incredibly effective for you. So, yeah.
I mean, you gotta scour the waiver wire. You could still make trades, by the way. You just can't trade anybody who's been on the 40-man this year. So maybe there's a prospect swap and you get a guy who you think can, help your bullpen right now. So stuff like that is still on the table. It's highly unlikely. We don't see that very often. No. Also, with more teams in the playoff race, I just want to throw this out there: either push the trade deadline back 2 weeks, or bring back the August waiver trade. It's beyond stupid. But anyways, so yeah, it's the bullpen. I don't know where that big arm's coming from, but they need one. It's almost like they should have gotten one. But we'll have to wait and see what they do, because they think they can cover these innings in-house. I disagree. So
yeah, as far as the waiver deadline, you can still put restrictions on it if you want, so teams aren't taking advantage of it. You could put like a money restriction on it or something, right? So like big money players aren't going like, Justin Verlander, right? To like block deals like that, but still allow teams the ability and the flexibility. And I think that's even more important now than ever with the third wild card, because I think by the time that you get to September 1st, if you're in or out at that point. Like maybe a couple teams are going to be on the fringes there, but for the most part, I think you pretty much understand if you're going for it or not at that point. So yeah, I would like, just without the waiver deadline, just something feels off about the acquisition period.
Just push it back 10 days or 2 weeks.
Sure.
Because this year you had what? You had 5 sellers, like 5 true sellers.
Yeah.
And you end up with a bunch of fan bases whose teams don't do anything because the market gets clogged by, and no team wants to do these sideways deals. None of the playoff contenders want to do sideways deals with each other. So it's dumb. You have to give the idea that, more buyers is great. Like, yeah, in theory, if there's a supply for them to buy from, but there's not. So push the deadline back, because, on August 15th, there are going to be teams that look at it and go, Yeah, we should have sold at the deadline. Yeah, we so yeah, they should push the deadline back. But anyways.
Yeah, enough deadline talk. Well, we're gonna put a bow on that on our Patreon show today. So if you're interested in listening to that, patreon.com/control the zone. You can get a free 7-day trial now. And once again, tonight, you can catch the Mariners and the Angels on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. So before we get out of here, Colby, any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's it. I do just want to say, I believe in the Seattle Mariners.
Sure.
I think you should believe in them too.
Mm-hmm.
And you should believe in them more than Jerry. So
Right.
Yes. I believe in you, Cal Raleigh, regardless of what the front office says about you.
All right. Making it happen, regardless. That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. It's TANEGNZLZ. And Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well over at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day. And again, we will be back next week. So we'll see you then. Peace.